Tex Watson is driving through LA and sort of his like, I left Texas to see what all this interesting LSD stuff is all about. He picks up Dennis Wilson hitchhiking, which is like, I'm sorry, the Beach Boy is hitchhiking. Can you imagine? It's like 1967. You're pulling into LA and you're like, come on, Dennis Wilson, hop in.
History, I'd like to follow me down the rabbit hole. History, I'd like to, frankly, I want to know.
Hello, and welcome back to HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck, where history is a party and everybody's coming. I am your host, Dawn Brody. And this is part 2 of the Manson family murders, in which I take you, my big sister Lisa, and her teenage daughter Ellie through the history of one of Los Angeles' most famous true crime tales. Now, in part 1, we met the Manson family and we went along with them in August of 1969 as they perpetrated the brutal Tate LaBianca murders that would make them infamous. We also sat in on the trials as Charles Manson, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten were all sentenced to death. But oh, dear listener, that was hardly the whole story. Ahead, hear the mind-boggling where are they now? Who stayed loyal to Charlie the longest? Who gets conjugal visits and has 4 kids in jail? What? And what do the Beach Boys have to do with all this? And then, as if that wasn't enough, guys, wait until you hear the theory that Manson was actually an unknowing, deep psychological operative created by the CIA and used as a lab rat to see if mind control was truly possible. I know, right? Let's get started. Okay, we're back. Lots of new things have evolved here. Lisa and I both have a whiskey. That's our emotional support drink. And Eliana is holding Yogurt, her emotional support dog. I want you to know that he is
trying to lay down.
Useless in actual crisis.
What do you mean? He's perfect. He might give a good yodel.
Like, why are you so nervous? It's freaking me out.
I might need my own emotional support.
He's not very good at protecting, but he's good at fear. People fear chihuahuas.
Really? Is that what you think about that?
People fear little dogs because
look at him smile.
he's different.
Well, that's true. He is different.
But little dogs, people think they're the scariest ones because they look so ferocious and they have such big personalities for their size, and that scares people.
That's true. I can see that.
So he has a fear factor.
I think that you have an interesting relationship to adorable things that you think are scary. Between the dolls,
I don't think she's scary. She sits on my bookshelf and
stares blankly.
But she came up in conversation as a haunting.
Yes, because it scares Mom.
I see. That I understand.
The tormenting your parents.
There's nothing wrong with her because...
Cheers. I would only clink yogurt. There is a real beauty and timelessness in doing things just to make your mom squirm. Yes. And I applaud you.
Thank you.
That's what this is.
And as a mother, I know mine's coming. And Beatrice is going to have to dig deep to make me squirm.
I don't know what it'll be.
Maybe I can fake it and she'll be
That's
satisfied.
What you need to... You know what? Get ahead of this.
Get ahead of this.
Find something that doesn't freak you out, that make sure she thinks it freaks you out, and then you can play it safe.
As we go into part 2 here, I'd like to know your review so far. How are you feeling about the situation? Put yourself in the position of your average American who's reading this on the headlines. You now know this poor Sharon Tate and all them dead people and these weird, scary hippies have gone on trial and they scared you, but they're all going to jail and they've all been given the death penalty. Like, how are you doing? What do you think?
Right. For the average American who might be consuming this news like you used to, like an hour a night, or you read the paper and that's it. This would be a hard thing to swallow, and I bet you the details of some of this wasn't necessarily in every news broadcast. Like, did Do you know what I mean? Like, we would see it today, and certainly there's a lot to digest if you want to really look it up. But like on the local news at like 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, did they actually be like, tell the details of these murders? I don't know.
You bring up a really good point, which is Lana and Jim Kriskowski in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, are getting the Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin version of the story, right? So they may or may not say in a terribly gory, they're probably saying it was terribly gory, it was incredibly brutal, these tragic, torturous death. And then you probably have the nylon rope or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like Jaws. People are picturing, like people are filling in the blanks if the blanks are there. And as you've just heard, if they know the details, it's no comfort. It's not any better when you know what they said.
You might not want to.
And however, in LA, this is a local story.
Right.
And this family, there's 40 or 50 of them. We don't even know how many of them there are.
They're capable of
loyal
this
as shit to this guy, Charlie. They are crawling on the sidewalk outside, and then what? They go home?
Yeah, right.
Because to your point, they're not getting arrested.
Right. That would still creep the heck out of me.
The quantity of guns sold in Los Angeles after the murders skyrocketed. The quantity of burglar alarms and home security and locks went through the roof. Because
it's something out of a horror movie.
Because
it is.
The idea that it exists in the world is scary. But that it's happening outside your door.
To rich people.
To nobody's
people that,
safe.
Right. To anyone. I got one more question.
Thank you. Yes.
What about the husband who is in Europe? How does he handle that?
Polanski.
I do want to know. Because he had to have been like, what the fuck was I doing in Europe?
Does the name Roman Polanski
rings
mean
bells.
anything to you?
Yeah,
I've heard it multiple times.
You have probably heard it. He's a really famous guy. He's still alive. He's still making movies.
Yeah.
He is also not allowed in the United States because he is wanted for the rape of a 13-year-old girl.
Wow.
He has an enormous quantity of sexual assault accusations that limit his ability to travel to the United States. Have not eliminated his ability to continue making movies. But if you've heard of the name Roman Polanski and you didn't know it was associated with Sharon Tate, you're like, also he was the husband of Sharon Tate. He comes home and he comes to the house with the blood still in it. Like,
right.
It hasn't, been entirely cleaned. He didn't really, and the house was rented. They didn't own it. So they move out. And I'll get to a few more details about Roman Polanski as we go. But yeah, he comes home. He's devastated and has a terrible time of it. Is given his privacy, and continues to work for years to come. Never implicated, even remotely.
Okay.
There was no,
But has to live on with knowing that he should have been home for his wife 2 weeks before she was about to have birth. That
If he
sucks
was,
too.
he would have been dead too.
Yeah,
most likely.
right.
Yeah. It's not like he could have necessarily done anything differently or been there.
He was kind of a little wimp. no chance.
Little wimp.
Yeah, he's a little wimp.
He was not the Superman they needed.
No, I think Frykowski just physically had the best chance, and he didn't get a swing in. So what I'm going to do now is go through what happened to the perpetrators after their sentencing. And I'm going to follow them through to either where they are now or their fateful end. And I'm going to start with Charles Manson because fuck this guy. You know what I mean? I don't want to make him the grand finale. You know what I mean? This like racist, murderer, brainwashing fuck who had no... Now, the fact is, he's also fucking fascinating. He's one of those people like an Aleister Crowley who you don't have to say that you're not intrigued. Or that you don't understand the magnetism. I think it can be really dangerous, actually, to be like, yuck, who would want that? It's sort of like, who would ever drink whiskey or smoke a cigarette? Yuck. And you're like, well, yeah, the first time you tried. You know what I mean? But like, it'd be ignorant. It would be naive to say, how could anyone follow this guy? Because you can't take your eyes off him because he's fucking fascinating. But also, fuck him.
Yeah, I said the same thing,
guy.
kind of like on the plane ride here. I said like, what humans can do is incredibly cool. Many of the things are completely like tragic, but it's amazing. Like humans do that stuff. We have the capability to do that stuff.
I think it's absolutely a fair point. You can be intrigued and have no attraction to something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
to use the
Fascinated.
language,
Exactly.
let the language be as sophisticated as your ability to say, I reject you while I study you. You know what I mean? Which is not always an easy thing. And people have, including this author, been like, oh, be careful. People go to interview Charlie and are like, uh-oh. Not like I love him, but like, I want to spend more of my precious life thinking about this man. And is that worth it, right?
Right.
To understand who Charlie Manson is, when he is sentenced, is like 33 years old. He had only spent 13 years of his life out of prison at this point. He has, shocker, a horrible childhood, right? Absent dad, abusive alcoholic mom who abandons him. He is abused sexually and brutally by his foster parents, by the schools that took him, by the other boys in the institutions in which he was incarcerated. He had an uncle who was a huge influence on him, who was sort of a West Virginia hide in the mountains man, like fuck the society, and told him don't go to them Yankee schools. And so he burned the school down. Like he had a rough time. This is in no way a justification, but if we're going to study the creature, right?
Origin.
And there doesn't need to be no room for sympathy here either. A damaged man in a broken system was rendered broken and damaged. We can give him that. When he was paroled shortly before he entered the hippie scene, he didn't want to leave prison. He said, I don't do well out there. He has a way in prison that works for him. You know what I mean? He's probably found a certain comfort there, and he doesn't want to leave prison. So that is also the way he sort of was thrust out right into the world. After this conviction for the Sharon Tate LaBianca murders, he goes first to the California State Prison. He spends time in Folsom. In 1984, a guy named Jan Holmstrom covers him in paint thinner and lights him on fire.
Shut up.
Which is a bad time for Charlie. He recovers, goes to San Quentin, where in 1986, he does an interview with Charlie Rose. Because we are not, again, the first three who are like, what the fuck is this guy, right? Studying him.
Right.
This interview is fascinating. You can find it on YouTube. I'll link it to you. He does several interviews. He does one with Diane Sawyer in 1994. And while he is psychotic and his babble is somewhat disconnected, it is one of those captivating performance psychobabble where your brain starts to draw connections. And I think this is where cult leaders really went. He can quote long passages of scripture. He's got a capacity for intriguing lines and poetry. He is a good singer-songwriter. We'll get to some of that later. His songs are great. His lyrics are great. And so every once in a while, you find yourself listening to him and drawing synapses and connections and hearing poetry and music and what he's doing. It doesn't take long but never, ever, 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 ever in his hours of interviews did he ever show remorse or regret or humanity for anyone who was murdered, for anyone who was brainwashed, for anyone who was in prison. It is generally the message was, you did this to your children. Your children came to me because you broke them. The music is doing it. We are just listening to the music that you're producing and doing what comes naturally. And he says, they were out there, your children were out there lost and looking for something. And they saw me and they saw a nice guy. And he goes, and I'm not a nice guy, but they like me. And so there was also more than just psychobabble. There's concentrated thought. There is point in
truth.
It's truth.
And
too.
truth.
Enough truth. The devil always throws a little truth in there. And he told his followers, I'm Jesus Christ and the devil. And one of the things they believed is that there's both in everybody. And they were just letting the devil out, right? When Tex Watson wakes up Frykowski on the couch, Frykowski says, who are you? And Tex Watson says, I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's business. That is court documents. Tex Watson still is like, yeah, that's what I said. Oh, the girls heard it too. He apparently found a way to traffic drugs Well, he was in the Pelican State Penitentiary. Again, Charlie Manson's very good at being in jail. In 2014, he is engaged to a 26-year-old girl named Elaine Burton, who he nicknames Star.
Oh my God.
Well, you're also like, let's hear it for our benevolent justice system, who was like, sure.
We'll let him be engaged.
What could Charlie Manson possibly do to a young woman in her 20s that would give any of us any concern? I mean, my God.
That's crazy. Yeah.
They divorce. He eventually divorces her because they don't get married. They're engaged, but they don't get married because he finds out that she just wanted to like have his body to like start a sideshow where like people would come and see Charles Manson's body.
My
so
God.
he leaves her. Poor Charlie.
That sucks for everyone.
For everyone.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. Like, I've seen his body alive. It's not great. He dies on November 19th, 2017 of colon cancer that led to cardiac arrest. Rest in pieces, Charlie Manson. Who would you like to hear about next? Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, she's the one who killed Sharon Tate, Patricia Krenwinkel, she's the one who stabbed Folger, Leslie Van Houten, the one who comes the second night and kills Rosemary LaBianca, or Linda Kasabian, the witness who bails.
Oh gosh, which one do you want to hear first? There's some good stories in there.
Let's go backwards. Start with Linda.
Start with Linda.
Let's start with Linda. So Linda Kasabian, as you recall, is the driver on both nights. And Charles Manson was like, yeah, she was the only one who had a driver's license.
Oh my God. They were all that young.
Well, and they didn't have a driver's license.
Right.
And she did. And he was like, we just didn't need to get pulled over.
Before we killed
And not
someone.
that would have kind of
Ruined
we
the
don't
whole
want to get in
scene.
trouble.
We can't get in trouble for...
We don't want to commit any moving violations. We have boundaries. So Linda Kasabian gets full immunity for her testimony. And again, she never killed anybody. So she was walking in with a little bit more leniency, right?
Right.
And she describes to the court what Charlie would do, how he did it. She had some remorse. And in exchange, she gets complete immunity. You can find her. I will link to you the two things that I saw. One is a documentary. She's in shadow. She's got a terrible wig. It's a wig where they're like, this is a wig. You know what I mean? And they're like, this is not her real hair.
Clown wig.
And like I think the best con would be that is actually like her hair. Because you would just never believe she had terrible straight blonde hair that looked like that bad. That would be the real coup. You'd be like, couldn't be her. It was a wig. And she's always in shadow with dark glasses. The handful that I saw, I was not comforted by Linda Kasabian.
Right. You're like,
she doesn't
she's
have
walking.
to say shit.
Right.
She has full immunity. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
for me, I just never saw a real like hat in hand, hand over heart. What a terrible beastie thing we did.
Thank God I woke up.
Yeah.
None of that.
She's not proud. Like, she's not boasting about it. But, like, it's little things. Like, she's always leaning back in the chair. Pretty comfy. You know what I mean? And a little pleasant.
Almost cocky. Almost
you
like...
can't see her. To be fair, she's a terrible wig. She's got glasses on.
Right.
She's in shadow. But she just seems like a woman who's like, yeah, like, I got away with that.
Wow.
It's nuts. We don't know where she is. We don't know what name she's going by. She's just not, we don't know. Leslie Van Houten, if we're going backwards, Leslie Van Houten is cute as a button, not gonna lie. She, like, there's one, again, this isn't funny, but there's one of the days that the three girls are walking down the hallway and they're crazy and they're in their little dresses and they're singing, and she has these beautiful ringlets in like little buns. And I couldn't help but think, like, she got a curling iron?
Like, right. How did she get all decked out?
I don't think you should get Leslie Van Houten a curling iron. Certainly not in this phase, but her hair looked amazing. She was the youngest woman ever on death row. She was 19. She vehemently denied during the court trial that Charlie made her do it. That was one of her biggest deals. Was she tried very hard to get on the stand and be a witness and say, we all did it on our own. Protecting the Messiah, just absolutely throwing yourself in front of a bullet for your guy.
Yeah.
So she was the lawyer that disappeared, which we're going to get to later, was her lawyer.
Okay.
And she was like, I want a retrial. right? I want to know about the effects of LSD. My fucking lawyer disappeared. I'm 19. Like, let's get a retrial. She did not get a retrial. Tons of parole requests. So, you sentence to death, then they commute it to life. She, every, 7, 8, 9 years, whatever the statute is at the time, she goes before the parole board and you argue your case. And my understanding, right, is that one of the key things you can't do is like, what I did wasn't that bad, or I wasn't that involved. Like, it feels like the parole board needs you to really mea culpa this. Like,
Right.
I am...
It's different. The reason we're paroling you is not because we're retrialing you.
Correct.
Got it. It's more like
changed.
I'm changed. I'm reformed.
I'm
yes.
reformed. And so if you're practicing for your parole
When that
hearing,
happens for us,
they're going to be listening very hard for like, I mean,
you didn't
it
really
was
mean
the 60s, man. Like, no. So she goes, and it's always denied, denied, denied. No, no. And I remember even in the 90s, they'd be like, Leslie Van Houten is up for parole. Nope, not going to happen.
Right.
In 2013, her parole is denied for the 20th time. In 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021, the parole board recommends her for parole. Why would you recommend? Why are there all these years? Because every time they recommended her for parole, Gavin Newsom said no.
Thank God.
The governor of California was like,
we're not ready.
I'm so sorry.
We got enough going on.
Like, Leslie, welcome back.
Right. 2020 on. People are like, nope.
But that's 5 times.
That's
the governor
crazy.
says the parole board said you can go. Now I can't. In 2023, Leslie Van Houten took this to the California Court of Appeals and was like, the governor can't. Tell the parole board decides. And if the parole board has said that I'm rehabilitated 5 times, at some point he has to acquiesce to the parole board. And in July 11th of 2023, they agreed and she was released.
Wow.
So she's 70.
She's 76.
Okay.
Now.
Do we
She's
know where she is?
She's currently living in transitional housing. She's very supervised.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I think she was serving Starbucks to me the other day.
Yeah,
I
like, I
recognized
think I saw her.
So she's living in transitional housing in a facility. She has a lot of supervision. She's not putting out a lot. Do you know what I mean? Her goal does not appear to be changing her public image or creating some kind of brand, thank God. But yeah, she's walking in the grass and grocery shopping, presumably, somewhere in my fine state.
Yeah, probably around here.
And I'd fucking recognize her. I've been staring. I watched your age. I've been staring at this shit for weeks. Okay, our next family member is Patricia Krenwinkel. Remember, she was at both murders.
Yes.
She killed Abigail Folger, and she stuck a bunch of knives in Lino LaBianca. And she also wrote the Helter Skelter and all the stuff in blood
Was she
at the
the
LaBianca
fork, the
house.
witchy?
She was the witchy one.
Gotcha.
She had, just like Tex Watson, she had originally fled to Alabama when the arrest happened, and it took her a hot minute to be extradited back to California. She doodled a lot during the trial. There was a lot of just smiling and giggling and writing things down. And she was loyal to Manson well into her incarceration. So she is continuing to chant. She's continuing to sing his songs. She's trying to communicate with him. She's doing all of this stuff for a while. And then I really encourage you to watch particularly the interviews with Patricia Krenwinkel. She goes into solitary confinement. And generally, the way the prison term worked, for the rest of your life is 23 hours in your cell.
Jesus.
1 hour out.
Wait, so she was in solitary confinement for the rest of her life. This
got-
wasn't from
oh,
something
thank you,
she
She
did.
got solitary. She did get periods of time in solitary confinement,
Okay.
but the general sentence, your life from here on out, is 23 hours alone in your cell, 1 hour a day out. And the 1 hour a day you have out is still walking the chain link fence, probably.
Right, right.
Eventually, any human being under the influence of anything is going to start to introspect.
I would hope.
And the way she describes it is she just started to realize who she was truly alone. Wow. without Charlie's influence, without her parents' influence, without all of these things. And it wasn't good. But she says now, and she's this aged face, you know, again, you watch this transition and her gray hair, she looks like mom. She's like, I don't know if I'm ever doing anything good or bad, but I know it's me. I have 100% understand that everything I decide and feel is coming from inside of myself, and I know who I am. And it has cost me and many others a tremendous cost to have this clarity. She gets her BA in Human Services. She's very active in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. In December of 2016, she tried a battered woman syndrome, not defense, but consideration for her parole, and her parole was denied. In October of 2022, she was granted parole, just like Leslie Van Houten, and Gavin Newsom reversed it, and she didn't get any more. She is currently the longest incarcerated woman in the United States. Wow. Mm-hmm. And the only reason our friend Patricia Krenwinkel is the longest incarcerated woman in the United States is because Susan Atkins died in prison, because Susan Atkins had been the longest incarcerated woman in U.S. history. Susan Atkins is the one who gutted Sharon Tate. She's got, again, really encourage you to go watch this, because one of the things Susan Atkins does, this is Susan rocks her style in prison. I've seen her in like 3 interviews. In particular, she's on an Australian 60 Minutes. Okay. In like 1985, and she is pure Pat Benatar. Wow. Gorgeous. Glitter eyeshadow. She's like full mod. Wow. It's very bizarre. And you watch her in every interview, she is at the top of the fashion of the time that you see. It's very interesting. She is tried originally for the murder of this guy, Gary Hinman, who we're going to get to, who's like the other tamer. So that's what brought her. Remember, she blabbed to the people in her cell. That was the crime she was brought in for, the murder of this guy, Gary Hinman. Okay. On April 1971, she arrives on death row. In 1977, she writes a book called Child of Satan, Child of God, and she has a huge religious conversion. Okay. She is a devoted, born-again Christian, for Christ's love, forgiveness. She does a lot of ministries and speaking and such, which I'll get to later. There's some of the others similarly go down a very, very religious path, which I'm like, it's very culty. You know what I mean? It feels very Manson. It's sort of like, no, I don't smoke weed anymore. I just drink all day. And you're like, no, well, you know. She got married twice in prison. Both of them very exciting. Wow. She marries Donald Lee Laser in 1981, and she is his 36th wife.
Dang, talk about Henry the Eighth.
38th, right? Yeah, wow. Then that doesn't work out. Surprise. She then marries James W. Whitehouse, a Harvard graduate 15 years younger than her. Whoa. Get it, Susan. What? He's all about defending her. He's a Harvard grad. He's devoted. There's a lot of people who fall in love, with people in prison. It happens all the time. Susan Atkins, described in very creepy detail how Sharon Tate begged for her life, and she said, "Shut up, bitch. You're going to die tonight." I mean, all of this stuff is on record. Round about the 80s and the thing, she was like, "I didn't actually kill her. Tex Watson did." And Tex Watson says the same thing.
He says, "I did it." Mm-hmm.
So we don't, and there's a lot of weird shit going on. And she wasn't like, "I don't think I need to be in jail or anything." And she says, "I could have stopped it. I didn't stop it. I didn't help anybody. I didn't stop anything. But I was over exaggerating what I did because I was very young. I was the youngest, and I was about to go to jail. And I felt like I couldn't tell all these women I'm going to jail with that I didn't do anything. Like, you know what I mean? There was some
she owned up to
there.
Something there.
So she's never, but that doesn't go well with the parole board. You know what I mean? But I think it's probably the truth. So she's in a real bind because she killed the most high profile person in the most brutal, high profile way. And she talked about how she did it, and she bragged about how she did it. So we're like,
and you had something to do with all of it. So there's that too. It's not like So who had the knife in hand?
Yeah, Charlie didn't kill anybody either. And he's not getting off the death row. You know what I mean?
Right. There's a bizarreness to that you're like, it's not a defense and it really doesn't matter. But
right. And Sharon Tate's family is on Sharon Atkins. Like,
I bet.
Mom and sister show up to every parole hearing.
I was going to ask
And
about
are
that.
like,
I do
no.
have questions about like all of the families. How do you I mean, some of them, we can go on this later, but like these people who, the victims are one thing. Obviously, you can imagine that they are not okay with anyone getting parole or whatever. But even the family members of the convicted, you said some of them were homeless or runaways or other things, but also that some of them ran back to their families after this happened. So bizarre. There's families out there whose kids, I mean, at this point, their parents are dead. You know, if these people were 15 to 20 years old when they committed these crimes, or whatever, 19 to 25, their parents are gone now, but they have siblings and families, and you're like, right? Like, you think about that. These are high profile. Like, these names ring bells, but like, if you're from that
Krenwinkel,
hometown, you're
totally.
you're not forgetting that. Like,
And they had different backgrounds. They all had, like, Charlie's background is not a huge shock for some of these figures. I mean,
Correct, yeah.
I'm no cop, but like, even as just a historian, most of the time, people who are broken people, hurt people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Broken and hurt.
There's a lot of like, oh, okay, there it is. Mom prostituted herself and tried to prostitute you, and you're like, but a lot of drugs in the family. But that wasn't uniformly the case. Tex Watson in particular was like homecoming king and captain of the football team, and
That's what I
really
thought.
achieved in high school, and like had no problems. Leslie Van Houten, the same. She had never. One of the things they say is she had never even hit anyone
so
before the day
crazy.
she went into the La Bianca house. But Susan Atkins does not ever get recommended for parole.
Got it.
And it is in large part because of the high profile part she played in the murders, and Sharon Tate's family being like, we will show up hours before you do and shut this shit down. In 2008, she's hospitalized for terminal brain cancer and asks for compassionate release. She's given months to live. Let me spend these months out of prison. And it's denied.
Good. Honestly.
They say, sorry, girl, dying in prison is kind of part of the point.
We didn't kill you in prison, but you are not getting out of prison to die, right? I get it.
Like, and her husband, her young Harvard graduate husband, was like, she's dying. So like, it's not like we're going to have great times, but we'd like to have them out. And they were like, too bad.
Yeah.
Let's hear about Tex Watson now, because boy,
There's some crazy there.
Tex Watson stabbed everybody.
Yes.
He stabbed and shot that sweet Stephen parent sitting in his car. Frykowski. He came out and stabbed Folger a couple times after Krenwinkel did. The Lino LaBianca, Rosemary LaBianca, and apparently Sharon Tate. And he shot Jay Sebring. I mean, in terms of who killed everybody, Tex Watson fucking killed everybody.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
He, as I told you before, was tried separately, but got the same sentence. He arrives on death row in November of 1971. It's commuted to a life sentence like they all were in 1972. He converts to Christianity, and in 1979, he marries. He's allowed conjugal visits, which are no longer allowed, and has 4 children. In 1981, he becomes an ordained minister, and he starts a ministry with his wife.
From prison.
From prison. The Abounding Love Ministries. Go to the website. It's very exciting. He writes a lot about his forgiveness journey. In 1996, his wife divorces him. She met a new guy. I don't know the details. I wish I did. They're still friends. In 2009, he gets his business degree. He gets his BS in business management. He's denied parole 18 times, and he's currently serving in San Diego. Allegedly, there's up to 15-ish other murders that people say are plausibly attributed to the family.
Wow.
From runaways who were just found stabbed near the property, people who, various drug deals gone wrong. They dabbled a lot in various drugs, and so there's bodies around. You know what I mean?
Can you put it past them? I mean, after all these stories, you're like, anyone murdered within 40, 40 miles, I'd be like, I think maybe we might know.
It's sort of the double-edged sword of having these kind of wild weirdos, right? Is it does create cover for someone else who's like, great, I've been actually hoping I could stab a hitchhiker. This is a perfect opportunity.
I'll put him on the plot. Yeah, you're right. That's true. But still, bizarre lives.
But they can, anyone who they can sort of, who died and they can somehow draw a connection to someone in the family is like, well. Mm-hmm. And the family says they killed that lawyer. So the lawyer's body, remember the lawyer who goes Leslie Van Houten's lawyer who goes missing in the middle of the trial, which I was like,
camping.
I remember yelling when I read it. I was like, what?
Where was he? You don't go away and don't come back.
So, right.
Unless you've lost it because this trial is so fucked up that you're like, I can never go back into a court again. Like, you could see somebody being like, I'm never going to be able to come back from that ridiculous, horrible, right?
I mean, it's plausible, right?
It is
maybe
plausible.
That's why he went camping for 10 days. Not a great choice, but the people who camped with him were like, there was a flood. There was a huge flood. We all had to leave the campsite. And he went off to hike on the thing. Or not hike, but like
out.
He was separated from us during the flood. So they were like, it's actually also possible he just died. But they found his body in the 70s, like a few years later, wedged between two boulders.
Good Lord.
So the Manson family took credit, actually. They said that it was the first of the revenge murders. Wow. But other people were like, no, I think he actually drowned and got stuck in these boulders. But like,
how do you know?
The eeriness, we don't know.
That's bizarre. Revenge murders. I mean, 40 wacko people watching him come and go from the courts. It's not hard to imagine that they might follow him to a campsite too.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's what my original thought was. Like, he goes missing in the middle of a recess for a huge trial against this guy that has brainwashed you to think that this is okay to do. It's like, okay, yeah, so we'll just do this to one, just, make him think that we're good. Like, we did this for you.
It also strikes fear in the heart of everybody else who might come after us and all these other lawyers. Yikes.
Hey, before we get back in bed with the family, okay, a moment to thank those who make all of my visits conjugal. My patrons. The latest to leave a little cash on the nightstand include Adam A. and Nicole K. Now, whether on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee, their support helps afford me the time and resources it takes to do the deep dives and keep the history coming again and again. Now, we've been through the Law and Order of the Manson family murders. Ahead for us, some of my favorite mysteries and conspiracies as we hold hands and tumble further down the rabbit hole together.
Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow.
It's too much, you guys. It's crazy. It's too much. So here's what I've done. I've broken it down. How many do I have? 4. So your choice. Do I have 4? I have 3. What you want to hear first. Hate is a 6-letter word, which is all about the Haight-Ashbury, the couple of years prior to our murders.
Jesus.
Good Vibrations, aka what does this have to do with the Beach Boys? And 4 is the Hollywood sex drug ring.
Jeez. Which one do you want to go first with?
Beach Boys.
Yeah, Good Vibrations.
Okay, you guys.
You're like, that sounds positive.
Yeah,
it's gonna be.
Lighten it up a little bit. Okay,
Right.
I want to be able to sleep tonight.
Indeed, right. So 60s, LA, everybody's groovy. This is like this wild new time. Dennis Wilson, who is one of the biggest, most high-profile members of the Beach Boys, picks up some girls hitchhiking, brings them back to his mansion. They party, they do drugs, everyone has sex. They say, we have this incredible guru that you should meet. His name is Charlie. Charlie comes over to Brian Wilson's house
pick a
and they
hitchhiker.
hit it off. And they write music together and they hang out for weeks in his house. They record in the studio. Manson is pretty sure he's finally going to be kind of a big deal in like the music industry. Tex Watson is driving through LA and sort of his like, I left Texas to see what all this interesting LSD stuff is all about. He picks up Dennis Wilson hitchhiking, which is like, I'm sorry, the Beach Boy is hitchhiking. Can you imagine? It's like 1967. You're pulling into LA and you're like, come on, Dennis Wilson, hop in, right? Dennis Wilson like, come back to my house and meet the girls. So that's how Tex. Brian Wilson is frankly like kinetic tissue to all this stuff. That's how Tex meets Manson. Part of the reason why we know this is because in 1968, a year before the murders, Dennis Wilson does this huge high-profile magazine spread. And the headline is, I live with 17 girls. Now, keep in mind, nobody knows the name of Charles Manson, and none of the murders have happened yet.
Anything.
But you can read the article where he says, I live with 17 girls. They have a guru, and I'm writing music with him now.
Wow.
He also has a friend named Greg Jacobson, who's like a talent scout. And Dennis Wilson is like, these guys are fucking cool, actually, which of course they are. They live in a bus. They're all fucking. They're all young. They're all super interesting and on this new drug. And he's like, we should go out to this ranch, this old movie ranch, which makes it even more interesting. And there's like a level and an element of the Western ranch and the facades that is so artistically and poetic and beautiful and sick in this history. Because when that moon landing happened, one of the other things that happened is the astronaut defeated the cowboy in our minds as like, what's the coolest dude?
Oh, got you.
Do you know what I mean? Like we used to be like the frontier.
I just read about all of that and cowboys mythologizing the West in history.
I love that you read that. And it's absolutely true. Because that was the frontier, the wild man who went out into the unknown.
Wow.
Even Star Trek says the final frontier. And astronauts just like, and that's the premise of Toy Story. For the records, is the astronaut beats the cowboy. It's that we went from this innocent 50s to the future, right? And so there's something kind of nuts that 2 weeks after the moon landing in this fake Western ranch
Connection.
dissolved. You know what I mean? Like if I was creating this from scratch, I would pat myself on the back for how beautiful that was.
Right.
But it's just
The artistic
what
creative.
actually happened. Yeah. And Greg Jacobson is like, yeah, and they go out there and they film some stuff because there's tons of kids out there. You know, people are bringing their babies and having their communes and their families and stuff, and they're all dirty and they're having sex with everybody. It's fascinating, right? That's the connection to Dennis Wilson, who obviously doesn't want to talk about that after August of 1969. But one of the things Tom O'Neill, the guy who wrote this book that like criticizes Helter Skelter and like pulls apart Helter Skelter, is generally saying that Helter Skelter told everybody that Manson was just this wild nut who wanted to cause a race war and he's a loon and he brainwashed these people and that's it. That's the story. And he realizes in his reporting that like people in Hollywood knew Charlie. People in the music industry knew Charlie, recorded with Charlie, remembered Charlie, took drugs, borrowed his women, loved that he just came with 17 women and left them at your house for a few days and you could do whatever you wanted for a while. And it became this like thing. And so many people, one of the crazy connections is Terry Melcher, who was a record producer, one of the biggest names in music, lived at 150 CeeLo Drive. And Manson came to his house all the time. And his girlfriend at the time was Candace Bergen. Fucking Murphy Brown.
What?
Right?
Yeah.
So Terry Melcher is dating Candace Bergen and living at 150 CeeLo Drive. And Charles Manson and the girls come there and hang out all the time. So one of the theories is that he was trying to get Terry Melcher. He was trying to send a message to Terry Melcher, even though he didn't live there anymore.
He was trying
Did he not know that he lived there anymore? How much of this, again, in a psycho's reasoning, in someone who has a distorted sense of reality, I kill everyone who used to live in your house. Mm-hmm. It's not even a threat.
No.
It's just a psycho's way of doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Similarly, the La Biancas, they just used to party there. The house itself held some sort of like meaning for them. Right?
But were they taking it? Like, is that it's dominating it or something? Some level
this
of like.
This is ours? Yeah. You are ours? 1967, San Francisco is the beating heart of like the hippie movement, and specifically the intersection of Haight and Ashbury, sort of like the Times Square. You know what I mean? It's an actual street, right? And it was just full of it. I mean, it was like a sideshow. Like tourists would come to like see the hippies at Haight Ashbury. You guys, Haight Ashbury has a free clinic called the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic, where you could get, and it was all volunteer doctors and nurses. They were like, these kids need help, right? For drug addiction, for STDs, for abortions, for whatever they need. And they made the clinic real groovy. So they like painted psychedelic stuff on the walls and like took care of everybody. Charlie was at this clinic like every day with the girls.
In San Francisco?
In San Francisco in 1967, before they moved to the ranch, before they moved to Los Angeles. Welcome to the rabbit hole, people. Mm-hmm. Charles Manson's parole officer is a guy named Robert Smith, and his office is at the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic. Okay. He has exactly one client, Charles Manson. I don't know if you've ever... Parole officers have hundreds. Like, that's the whole thing, is they're just overworked, and they can't keep up with it. He had one, Charles Manson, and Manson met him every day at this weird free clinic in Haight Ashbury. He is ridiculously lenient. I can't even begin to tell you how many times Charles Manson is arrested between his release from prison in 1967 and his arrest for the Tate LaBianca murders. For car theft.
Jesus. And that's not a small crime. Grand Theft Auto is titled that way because it is a serious crime. Like, that's not something you just get to like skip with your parole officer. Like,
no. And it was reported, and the author of this book goes to the parole officer, like, what the fuck, man?
Right.
And he was like, oh, you know, I didn't know that. I didn't get it. It's too much, right? Then we find out that this Haight Ashbury clinic is also the office of a guy named David Smith, who was doing a study on LSD and how LSD affects people's judgment, their ability to be brainwashed. He is like studying LSD officially and like writing papers on it. When he's interviewed by this guy, Tom O'Neill, keeps switching because he talks about how mice and LSD and brainwashing and how he got the mice. There'd be one dominant male that would dominate all the other males, and the females then would all do whatever this male, and he's describing basically the family. But as he's describing the family, he keeps switching between mice and rats. He keeps saying the mice did this, the rats, and then the rats did this. And Tom O'Neill's like, was it mice or rats? Because they're actually any scientist would know they're an entirely different thing. They behave different socially and they take different doses of things. So was it mice or rats? And did I say rats? I meant mice. And Tom O'Neill's like, I think he meant the family. I think it was human. God. He's like, I can't actually prove it, but the thrust of the book is that MK Ultra, which is a program that the government denied for years because it is as crazy as it sounds, and it is all about LSD, brainwashing, and mind control. We got the idea from the Soviets, who were doing sort of a Manchurian Candidate thing. Okay. The whole idea is, can we brainwash someone to not only go and murder, but then can we change their memories, wipe out a true memory and replace it with a false memory? That was sort of the thrust of the thing. And how controlled can they be? For how long? What dose of LSD over what period of time, combined with hypnosis, combined with sex, combined with all of these things, what combination would do it? And essentially, Tom O'Neill's like, just all of these things coalesced at the corner of Haight Ashbury in 1967 with our guy Charles Manson, while his parole officer is just ignoring everything that should have gotten him incarcerated. Right. There are records missing that should not be missing, that would indicate who handled the file and why it disappeared. A lot of the research that was done into these mice or rats was stolen. There was a burglary at the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic shortly after the murders, and all of those files disappeared. It's fucking nuts. So,
Lots.
What's crazy is like,
unpack
I'm
there.
so glad I got this out of my brain, you guys. I have been spending far too much time with Charles Manson. I was utterly emotionally like unprepared for the conspiracy theory stuff. It's so dense.
Yeah.
It's so much. I strongly encourage you to go read the book. If you don't want to read the book, here's good news. Netflix has made a documentary on chaos, and they have the author, and they do a lot of good stuff. But here's the deal. I read/listened to the 11-hour audiobook.
Wow.
A 90-minute documentary takes a teeny little nibbles off of the sheer quantity of fuckery and crazy mind-bending, like you start to feel nuts, that is in this book, Chaos. I also strongly encourage you to read it. It's crazy.
You might want to wait till your frontal lobe is further developed.
You might want, or get in there now. Let it go. Get weird. Here's my parting thought, because I think it's what simultaneously centered and stressed me out the most. Let's just say that there is some crazy combination of like a hidden Hollywood sex drug ring that was trying to cover up their like sex trafficking of Charlie's girls in combination with like drug deals, in combination with like a CIA operated brainwashing experiment. Let's just take that for like, okay,
That might happen.
the entire Tate LaBianca, this entire thing was actually like orchestrated and covered up, and the seeds of that evil are still out there. Mm-hmm. But here's the truth. In the midst of all that, conspiracy or not, Stephen Parent was just trying to sell a clock radio to a caretaker. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
it shouldn't give you any more comfort or fear to think that there are tendrils of this story that link to another decade in history or the CIA or
Right.
all this stuff, because if it makes you no safer and no more vulnerable, because if you're just bringing a clock radio to some guy, you're gonna, you know what I mean? Like,
It is what it is.
the history may touch you and the history may pass you by, but like when it blankets an era, as this story does, no one gets out. Jesus. Right?
Right.
So sleep tight.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah,
right?
before we go, I do want to know, do you have any questions or final thoughts? Like, do you think, here's a question for you guys. Do you think you could be susceptible to a cult leader and brainwashing?
Personally, I'm not like, I'm fully like, I know who I am. I don't, even with my own teachers, if they say something that I like don't agree with, I look over to my friends and I'm like, are we serious? Is this like one of the English teachers that I don't have is like talking to students and saying her political view and is telling them like, this is what's right. This is what should be happening. And I don't have her, but some of my friends do. And I'm like, that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we shouldn't be doing that in schools. Mm-hmm. So I think I could.
You decipher between.
Yeah, but I feel
What
like
do you think what
there's
do you
also
think could get you? Because
the
I think
fact that if he's coming after people like this and is this smart about it, there's a danger aspect. Like, if I don't do this, am I in danger?
like you think you could be freaked out into it, like threatened into
Yes.
something terrible.
Yes, I think.
Do you think
that
you
would.
could be seduced into it? And I don't even mean, because
No.
here's like with me, like I know like I could not have come to LA at a different time in my life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because like I love drugs, and I think weird people are the best people. And for better or worse, I do sit down with uncomfortable people and be
just
like, let's talk. Let's get into it. I'm very curious about what you think. I want to know all about it. And I think I could definitely see a time in my life and
If you had
coalescing
met.
and also desperation. Let's not forget a lot of these girls have nowhere to go.
Right, yeah, that as well.
So he's going to take care of me and he's nice.
I would say I'm with you. I think I'm not going to pretend that all of that doesn't scare me into thinking, how does this happen? Mm-hmm. So to the level where you're saying, even if it was orchestrated. So say, for example, the seeds have been planted that maybe Charles Manson was in prison. They identified him as somebody who was charismatic and could be part of this and just played off his strengths. And why not? Right? Let's see what happens. Experiment with him and see what he can do.
Yeah.
We need to experiment. How would it ever come back on us? Like, this is all of that. There's an element to it that I don't know whether it's orchestrated by a government entity or just a fucked up but very charismatic person that I would be able to not, like, to your point, if you met someone at the wrong time with the wrong circumstance, I don't know that I would be any different than anyone else. Because I also am like you. I'm not saying I'm open to just, tell me your life, and
I'll tell you, I go to the ranch. 100% I go to the ranch. These guys pull up in their bus and tell me they want to take me to the ranch. I'm going to the ranch.
Right.
I love your bus.
Right. But
I mean, I'm all over it. But when and that's where they say it turns. One of the girls, Patricia Krenwinkel, is like the least conventionally attractive. You know what I mean? And like one of the things that happens is like the first time she met Charlie, he made love to her and told her how beautiful she was. She'd never heard that before. And that was it.
And that's enough for a lot of women out there.
He tells you how special you are.
Right.
That was the thing. Everyone was like, Charlie made you feel important. So good about yourself long before he hurt you and long before he asked you to hurt anybody else. He raised you up and made you feel like you were really special. And
there's
really
a term
important.
of family that's been thrown in that very subtly, but like these people had nothing before, or you're assuming they've escaped what wasn't something they related to as a family and have come into a place where they feel that they have a community. And that's an extremely powerful piece to the whole concept of cult, where people are like, I'm accepted here. I am powerful here. I do have a place here. And we have a mission. We are a collective who feel strongly about our mission, which may be peace, love, and other things positive, and it may also be power. But you don't even know the underlying pieces of that. Like, I think that's the concept that is the scary part of a cult, where, you may be told this is for these causes. This is what we're here for. We all love each other. We're here for a community. But the movement of that, like, I just think there's a lot of layers to cult life that is, to your point, it's a void that is being filled, and that it's hard to imagine you would just swallow that. But there's a lot of interconnectivity to that you can't pull apart and say, I think differently. You don't know, like, the layers of that. And to your, I'm proud of you. I really am. I think as a young woman, you do think independently. I've had so many conversations where I come away going, she has it together.
Did not have the clarity and self.
Right. So I'm not saying that. I'm questioning that. I think it's fair to, and you should approach life like, I have it together. I am thinking for myself. But when you hear a story like that, there's also an element to it where you have to acknowledge, like, holy cow, lots of these people felt like they didn't know Charles Manson before they ran away. And that was a big, brave thing to run away from whatever they were escaping. They come into California and find a family with this cult. Like, it's a bizarre, like, so they already felt like, you would assume not everyone was just aimlessly walking around with no idea of who they were. Some of them thought they were brave to have left their hometowns.
And they were. And here's the other thing that, like, America, I don't remember seeing a lot of this drawn out in the contemporary, like, discussions. I also don't think I'm the first one to articulate this. But given the fact that it's happening at the same time as Vietnam, which is also the first televised war, and we're seeing things like the My Lai massacre, which, if you're not familiar, was a particularly atrocious act on the part of the American GIs, where they just, like, went into a small village and executed men, women, and children, civilians, and
very dark,
and
very
rape
dark.
And murder and doing the worst of soldier stuff. And the American soldiers did it. And one guy said, "What the fuck, man?" and, like, stood between and, like, reported. And so, like, that's how we knew about it. And I feel like even before things like the My Lai massacre within Vietnam was such a brutal, trying to figure out who were combatants and who were civilians within, like, a population. And but that the public, while seeing Vietnam, they're young 18 to 22-year-old men who go away and are told what to do and given a weapon and told that's the enemy.
Vietnam is not invading the US. Like, it was a very abstract idea that this is the enemy. They're not the Soviets. They're not the Germans. They're not the Koreans. It's hard, but you go kill them, and you kill them in brutal, violent ways that send a message. You shave your head. Mm-hmm. You disassociate. These are your brothers now. So there's an element of like the pearl clutching, that what we were doing intentionally with an American flag at the exact same time, it was incomprehensible to happen with females at home. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't see how is this possible? And you're like, well, it's called basic training. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? What do you mean, how is it possible? You get everyone to wear the same clothes. You get everyone to say the same things and walk in the same line. And then you give them a gun and you tell them who to kill.
Mm-hmm. And you paint the us versus them, and you make an enemy. You make it clear you're part of this, and that is something else over there.
And you also convince them they hate you and they want to kill you.
Right. So all of those elements existed in cult and in war.
It's a thin line. And it's your war. Church. And Scientology. I mean, Charles Manson loved Dianetics. Somebody gave him a nice Dianetics book when he was in prison, and he was reading a lot of Scientology stuff. And the Scientologists, when this whole thing came out, were like, we're not that big yet. Let's just keep that one.
Don't talk about it.
It is a wild story, right. But I think you can see why, and if you disagree, let me know why. I think this should be taught in high school. I think this should be part of our American history curriculum. I think we can teach it as part of Vietnam. I think you can teach it as part of whatever history story you have. Like, I encourage people to not lean away from the story of Charles Manson and the Manson family, because I think there is an enormous amount to learn from it. Mm-hmm.
How does mind control happen? Mm-hmm. What are the elements of mind control? Break it down. And you did a very good job to draw the line between, we were doing it for our military, and there were some social constructs in parallel that you can't avoid. That one is not very different from the other.
And keep in mind that the parents of this generation are World War II vets, right? So we nuked.
Right.
We were the first and only country so far, knock on wood, to drop nuclear weapons. So we've seen, but at this point in 1969, the Holocaust, the concentration camps. We've been through the Nuremberg trials. We know how Nazis brainwashed and used methamphetamines to create the Blitzkrieg. And we know. So horrors are not new. Mind control is not new.
Right.
War atrocities are not new. But teenage girls at home, now that's an entirely different thing. And I think that we just never saw that it was in some ways a really logical next step to what was happening in the world. Like, it was almost sort of appalling that we thought it would never happen here.
Yeah, it's also weird. He knew where to find all of these people. It's 40 people, and he just knows I know what to do. I have so many of them already. He knows exactly how to get them, where to find them, and what to do at that point. It's just
I know if I was in a particular place and somebody just who's also really charismatic and special says, boy, you've really got a beautiful spark in you. No one understands you, do they? Yeah. I do. And I'd be like, yeah, great. Thank you. Finally. Yeah. That bus is amazing. No, say no more. Say less.
I'm coming. I'll be there.
Do I call you Charles, Charlie? What do we prefer here? Do I do the sex myself? Does someone do it for me? I would really prefer to think that I'm completely immune from this kind of thing. And perhaps now in my elder years and my knowledge, perhaps I am.
After studying this.
Boy, out here, there are a lot of versions of me that would have been like, you like The Princess Bride too? Mm-hmm. Great, man.
We're one. We're a family.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good question. You bring up a question that I want to ask. Of these 40 families, we don't know their whole backstories, but you said it was a mix of runaways, But most of them, most of them choose to be there in the sense of like,
Oh yeah.
there was no.
So
these 40 people living out with Charles Manson on this ranch came voluntarily over the course of years, probably,
In fact,
that he accumulated a family.
Yeah.
Did anyone ever leave? There's got to be Charles Manson
a few
stories.
people left, and I don't think it was encouraged to leave. I mean, Scientology has a very like you're a non-person. Like
If
when
you
you
leave.
leave, the consequences you never speak to your family again. Like they make the consequence of leaving if they let you leave, and there's a lot of accounts of like they don't actually let you leave.
Yeah.
I think there was probably some of that. It's possible that some of them 15 murders we're not sure about.
Were people trying to leave?
Either trying to leave or maybe people who were arrested and gave information and they found that information troubling. You know what I mean? Charlie, whatever. Charles Manson also thought he committed a murder right before this. In a drug deal, he shot a black man named, I think it's Charlie Crow. And Charles Manson thought he killed him and he was a Black Panther. So he was convinced the Black Panthers, he got incredibly paranoid right before this, and he was convinced the Black Panthers were coming to the Spawn Ranch to kill him and to kill the family, and the race war was starting. But like the guy he shot didn't die and wasn't a Black Panther. So like in and among all of the questions and all of the potential intention, like the CIA intended to do this and MK Ultra intended to do this, Dr. Jolly West intended to do this, is the wild, rapid unpredictability of someone who just fucked up, got it wrong, made a false guess, made an impulsive decision.
Wow.
It's something.
The whole story itself isn't necessarily scary. Like the murders, yes, they're bad, but they're not the scary part of it. It's scary how easy it was for him to convince people to do it.
That's it.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I think that's why this is so eerie, right? Because it has the gore of like a good true crime murder thing where you're like, look away, look away.
It's kind of scary to the, like, yeah, some of these people are still walking around today, the people he was able to brainwash, but they're not going to do anything without him. He was the main mastermind. Like, that's not...
Well, in looking around right now, do you in any corners of current society see people who seem to be acting against their best interest, saying things they know aren't true, repeating things they know are completely illogical because they're in some kind of thing? I mean, I remember watching a documentary about North Korea and Kim Jong-un, who's the dictator. Yeah. And like every once in a while, they'll let somebody come in and it's a very controlled thing. They'll drive them around just to like a specific grocery store and they'll show them just that grocery store. And they'll be like, see, North Korea's great. Everyone's really happy. Look, she's happy.
Right.
And then they like close off the windows and drive to another location and get out and go, look, people are playing soccer. I mean, could we be that bad if there's a soccer game going on? And it all seems very like Stepford Wives, like this is crazy. And I remember watching one where this lady in very beautiful English is like, and this is a golf course. It's this beautiful golf course where the great leader had an 18 round. Every hole was a hole in one. And this is the tribute to his perfect game of getting a hole in one on every hole. And the journalist went, a hole in one on every hole. It's literally never been done. None of the greatest golfers have gotten any. You know what I mean? Right. The chances of... And she's looking at him going, he did. It was a great day. And this is the statue because it's... And I remember that was scary. Like the torture chambers didn't scare me. Like they did. Like the like de-persifying people and stuff. But like that scared me the most. That she was like, of course he did. Whether or not you believe it, I can't tell if you believe it.
Right.
And I think that when you see people who are like particularly devout, that are like this is the
blind faith.
Blind faith, where they go, yeah, I drink that grape juice and eat that cracker and I go to heaven. And you go, does that make any sense to you? And it's like, faith doesn't need to make sense. And you're like, oh shit.
Right.
And again, no offense.
No offense to religion.
Yeah,
No
it's kind of
offense.
one of the reasons my school offers AP psychology senior year, and that's the class I want to take the most in high school because of stuff like this. Like,
To think about how people think.
yeah, like specifically murderers. Like, what point in your brain is just like, I should do that. That makes perfect sense. Just to like end someone's life. That's insane.
And also some of the like, and I don't want to victim blame because I understand it. Yeah. The like, even if you just bring it down to a real personal level, your husband or your dad comes home with lipstick all over his mouth and his shirt is unbuttoned and he's way late. And you happen to be sitting in the living room when he walks in. You go, "Hey, Dad, where were you?" And he goes, I was just picking up groceries. And he doesn't have any groceries. And you have to decide in that moment, am I going to buy it? Am I going to push back? No way. And you like to think in an abstraction, of course, I would be like, what the fuck? You were obviously kissing somebody. What's with all the lipstick? But the reality is, for most people in that moment when it's your dad or it's your boss or this is not, I can't just say, are you having an affair? Were you just kissing some? Or I can't say, did you steal that? Or I can't say, are you lying to me? Because
It's very confrontational.
I can't accept the truth.
Right.
And I also can't demand it.
Right.
And it happens quicker than you think.
Where you just want to say, okay, and good night.
Right. And I think that one of the things that like is really important to like keep in your heart when you hear stories like this isn't even so much that can happen to me, which is another important thing to think about. But like, it's a mistake to think the only people who could be brainwashed like this are stupid people.
Right.
People who are totally unlike me, which I know you weren't saying that, but like, I think sometimes I think we discard it.
Yeah.
Like it can't be that easy to allow that to happen.
Yeah. And probably, yeah, if the craziest version of Charles Manson just ran up to you with his craziest arms and was like, "Follow me," you'd be like I don't.
That's not happening.
This is
Yeah.
utterly ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's not how it goes.
No.
The devil doesn't have the pitchfork and the red face and the horns and be like, "Do evil things." Like that just simply isn't how it works. It's usually like, "Do you like mac and cheese?" And you go, "Of course I do." And that's how it starts. Of course I love mac and cheese.
Right. We have something in common.
Me too.
Yeah. Right.
Let me give you a hot palate cleanser.
Yeah.
If you're starting to get like, fuck, now Dawn's told me the worst and now I'm going to join a cult. And she's also said she's probably going to join. There might be some people on their way here right now to be like, "Dawn, we have a van." And I'll be like, "Oh,
I've always wanted to see the ranch.
does it have carpet on the ceiling?" Oh, I love those kinds of vans, man. And they'll be like, "We have dogs and beef jerky." And I'll be like, home rolled joints, fuck. But here's a palate cleanser. Here's what everyone should do is go watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay.
It's the Quentin Tarantino. It's if you haven't seen it and you should have, it's an alternate history movie.
Okay.
So like Inglourious Bastards gives us the pleasure of seeing Hitler die.
Right.
Right. And like World War II doesn't end that bad. And you're like, wow, this is a great movie. And also fucking we got to watch Hitler die. This is great.
Blew up in the movies.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood gives a beautiful treatment to the woman Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie. And you get to spend time with her in this movie. And so Quentin Tarantino gives her a lot of wonderful time. And there's Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt is a stuntman on a Western ranch. You meet a lot of these characters. You hear a lot of the dialogue. Quentin Tarantino simultaneously puts you in 1969 Los Angeles. The characters are beautifully vivid and very historically accurate. And he fucks with the story and he twists how it ends. And it is a really wonderful journey. So
Nice.
get the hints. And
I feel like I've seen snippets, but now I'm going to rewatch it because to know that the history is so tied into the story is worth it.
And it really has like that undercurrent of like the dying cowboy and all of that. So
Yeah.
Nice.
Eliana and Lisa, that
was
was the
good.
HILF of the Manson family murders. I am so grateful that you guys came to visit me first, that you let your crazy aunt HILF all over you,
That was
did.
great. I enjoyed that.
and that you took all this time. I really love
Really
you. I
good.
really love you guys, and I really love
We love you.
HILFing that history
We love
with you.
Oh, thanks again to Lisa and Ellie. I mean, their visit was such a dream. And yes, okay, I also took them to the beach and restaurants while they were here. I'm not a total animal. And also, since we recorded, a bit more Manson history has unfolded, right? Patricia Krenwinkel, as of a week ago, was also recommended for parole, and we await to see if the governor will block it, as he did the first few times with Leslie Van Houten. Who knows? If I see either of them at the grocery store, I'll try to snap a picture for you guys. And speaking of getting out for good behavior, it's summer break for HILF. Okay, we're taking July off, which means your next new episode will come out August 6th. But girl, okay, it ain't like I'm gonna be truly gone. Okay, folks in LA can come and see me live at HILF Public School the first Thursday of every month. The next show is July 3rd at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, California. I will be undressing some of my favorite founding daddies as we celebrate the anniversary of our independence, or the morning of the loss of it. Who knows? But either way, it'll be a 2-drink minimum. Until next time, our theme song was composed and performed by Kat Perkins. Artwork for HILF is designed by Joe Dressel. A reminder that you can find my sources, links to the books, documentaries, and articles I reference in the summary of this episode, or by emailing us, hilfpodcast@gmail.com, or messaging us on social media @hilfpodcast. If you'd like to leave a little cash on the nightstand, I am so grateful. You can find me on Patreon or buy me a coffee. Links to these and more are all in the show notes. This has been HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck with Dawn Brody. I'm Dawn Brody, reminding you that history is a party and everybody's coming.